understanding through the. So, Ben in Trivandrum is an event that we host every time. An incredible personality, an entrepreneur from across the globe joins us in Trivandrum and would like to drop in and say hi to the talent ecosystem and the startup ecosystem here. So today we have Mr. Babu Sivadasan, sir. He doesn't need an introduction because everybody knows him as somebody who's grown up from Kerala and has established his name across the globe. Welcome, sir, to today's event.
Great to be here. Thank you.
And we have our own pillar of the startup ecosystem in Kerala and especially in Trivandrum, Mr. Alex Panicker. Robin sir has been with us since the beginning of was way back before then. And he has helped mentor many of the startups that we see here today. And it's incredible to have him lead the session today and moderate this entire session with Babu sir. Welcome.
So we will talk about some of the history part of your journey. We'll talk about what you're doing now, what the system is evolving from your perspective. And it will be more like after that we'll open up for questions from all, questions of interaction from all. So let's not make it too like monologue or duologue kind of thing. Let's make it more interactive. How many of you don't know Babu? Right? Pardon for us saying that. So everyone knows about it, right? Probably they know you as the Envestnet guy, right? But we would like to go a little bit back in line, right? You started a company here, then merged with the US entity, got listed in Nasdaq, right? So take us through your journey. I think it all started when even the word startup was non-existent. So take us through that journey. How did you start? Why did you start? And why did you choose to start? When was it? Late 90s?
95.
And mid 90s. So, yeah. So why did you choose?
So first of all, I'm so sorry. I speak a lot about customer delight and customer experience and things like that. And I calculate the odds. I've never lost my luggage in the past. I've made so many trips to India. I come here every other month, but I've never lost my luggage. I calculate the odds. Entrepreneurship is all about beating the odds, right? So I calculated the odds, and I had this strange feeling that, what if I lost my luggage today? And that was yesterday. And I landed by around 12:30 and waited there till 1. And no, never. That's never going to happen. But it did happen finally. So I'm sorry I was late because I was shopping for something because I didn't have anything to come in, and I would show up with my pajamas. So that's not probably a good thing. So I'll start. First of all, I was expecting more women here, more ladies here, and so we should, because the next 10 years is going to be, your time, right? So we should work on that. Okay. You've all faced rejection at some point in your life. Is anybody here who hasn't faced a rejection? Okay, so rejections come in different forms. You get rejected by ladies, if you're a male, and You don't get rejected, by the way. Like you just propose and you will be accepted, but that's not the case with men, right? So rejections do happen. Rejections from an employer, right? So that is something that happens. In my life, that had a profound impact. I'll talk about that a little bit. Rejections by a venture investor or an investor, like they propose and may not fit with what they want to do, right? So you get rejected, right? I'm sure there are other forms of rejection, but those are the three that I can relate to, right? So I didn't start off wanting to be an entrepreneur at all, right? I just wanted a job, right? So I went through 4 years of engineering, and all I wanted was it, and that was the fastest path to getting a job because I come from a background where I didn't want to be a liability for my parents. I so really wanted a job as soon as I graduated, and engineering seemed like I had deep in my heart, I knew I could build stuff, So very early on, I used to build stuff, little things at home. So I thought I'd do pretty good as an engineer, but as I was going through second year or so, I started thinking more about body and kind of. I thought maybe pursuing a doctoral profession may not be bad, but then I'm already in second year of engineering, so I got to finish that. So as I was going through the final year engineering, I went to CET here and a class of 40 in computer science. I looked at everybody, and if there is one person who badly wanted a job, that was me. Right? I really wanted a job and wanted to go home before I graduate and tell my parents that, okay, I aced it, I got a job. Right? That's all I wanted in my life. So a lot of companies came, and what actually further I had difficulty. I was the gold medalist, but didn't matter. I always got because the excellence in accounts don't really mean anything in life, right? What really means is that you have the will to work through. Talent is overrated in my opinion. Your ability to persist, and continue to work on things that matter to you, right? That is all that matters. So I, as I was going through the interviews or tests or things like that, my classmates would say, "Oh, you lace it, no problem," right? But for some reason, I had difficulty acing a job interview or test or something like that. After 7 or 8 or 9, I think companies came, and then everybody will come and ask me, "Hey, what is going on? What's wrong with you? Like you're not getting through, and you got to clear the way so that we get a chance." So I would get the first couple of interviews or first couple of tests, I didn't make it, and I was disappointed. But as I went through each and every one, I would get really disappointed. I would go home and cry literally, right? Because I didn't want to burden my family, continue to burden my family. So as I was going through, the 7th or 8th company came, Infosys, Wipro, TCS, came through, and I didn't make it. So finally, I was down to my last. So along the way, I'm not that bad. I work hard. I wanted to be the best employee for my first employer. Like I would do whatever it takes to make them successful. But somehow you can't make it. So I started thinking differently at that time. Maybe I'm looking at the problem very differently. The problem is that not that you need a job, you need to create one. And then you need to create jobs for a bunch of other people as well. Right? So I started thinking about the problem very differently from that point onward. So rejections lead to that. And I was down to my final interview. I have my former colleague Suri here, so we used to sit right next to each other, and I'm sure he'll have a lot of crazy things to say about me. But that final interview, IMR, an organization who had grand plans in Trivandrum, I was able to ace that through. But by then, deep in my heart, I've already made up my mind. I want to be an entrepreneur. That's how I got started. So got the job. I was in the office all the time. I slept there on the floor. I worked on, I think there were about 20 projects going on. I inserted myself into every one of them, somehow played a role, because I felt so much thankful for that. I'll talk without my. Yeah, I'll just walk. Is it okay? Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay. So maybe it's natural. That's the way it was meant to be. So I'll try my best. Okay. As I went through, I made up my mind. So I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I heard about that entrepreneurs create a lot of jobs. So it was one of those things. You really made up. Once you make up your mind, right? There is nothing stopping it, right? So that's really. While working at IMR, I would get involved in all these things, for the simple reason I was learning, right? I slept on the floor every single day in the office, went home at 6 o'clock and then came right back at 9. And then I would be the only one in the office every night, and along with people who would take care of things in the night, so that we had. I still look back at the kind of talent that they attracted. So they decided they were going to move to Bangalore, and I just didn't like it, because Trivandrum is the only city that I've known until then. Like I've been to Cochin once, right, and that was it, Okay. So that was pretty much. I thought, okay, well, things happen in your life, that there is a reason for that. So I took it that way, and decided to, go to Bangalore after 6 months, and through that journey went to US. But my real objective was to kind of do something in Trivandrum. So back in '95, I went to US, and the very first month, I wanted to do something. So I had my salary, right? So obviously, I calculated if I lived on dollar meals and I would buy a car for a while, I would walk 3 miles every single day, each way. And all of that enabled me to support a team of 5 in Trivandrum. So there comes the second set of rejections, in life. So that was, I started, I went to, I was in Chicago for a brief period, didn't like it at all, right? It was crazy weather, right? So, decided to go to Silicon Valley energy, and I felt right at home there, a bunch of college kids, trying to create great companies, you are in that, vitalizing, energizing place. And, very first day, I was looking for, I had an objective, how do I make progress on that objective? So that's all I thought about. And so I got a job. So with that job, I could support a team. So I convinced one of our former colleagues from IMR, he wanted to stay in Trivandrum. So I said, okay, so let's start something here, right? So we started a company called Nectar Systems at that time, and didn't have an idea as to what we were building, no plan, it was one of those things, you had a deep desire to start something, so the thought was, we'll figure out along the way, right? So started that. I would send my salary, I would say I shared an apartment with 6 or 7 people. I know it is illegal there, stay in an apartment with 7 or 8 people. Actually, I was one of the first to be there, so everybody came later, started sharing our apartment, which meant that I could my living expenses were very low, like $200 for rent and maybe another $100 per month of expenses. So really, I got a lot of money left. So using that, so we were exploring various things. So starting in Trivandrum was, again, was not it just felt right to me. This is a place, that you graduated, got free education here. It's a great city, not polluted. Great place. It's your birthplace. Right? There's a certain amount of love that comes with being the place that you grew up in, right? So I grew up in a very small village, with very near Calcutta, right? Caricature, right? That's a place that I grew up in. So it doesn't feel like a village anymore, but because of the growth went to those places. And then at that time, to get to the city, it would have been a challenge. You could walk for a while and then you take a transport bus. So anyway, I started there, and we explored various ideas. I thought that was the time AOL was the undisputed king in online. AOL gave you access to go online, right? And then they had everything. They had a monopoly on almost everything. They had this cool chat application called ICQ, right? So I thought, it would be great in a place like India to have a multilingual chat application, right? So, and ICQ was really taking off. Everybody was on ICQ, so I thought that would be a multilingual chat application would work in a place like India, right? So that was my startup idea, right? So, but that came a little later. So, first idea was, a friend of mine from here said, hey, there is a need for computers here, right? And I thought, oh, great. So we'll buy computers from Silicon Valley and ship it here. And yeah, it's a great business idea because I thought about Wipro systems, so they all made it, so we could make it too. So we showed up demand from all over the place in Trivandrum. There were about 50 people who wanted computers. So I went to many stores in the Silicon Valley, found the cheapest, store, right? So, and we made a shipment of 50 computers to Trivandrum, and I didn't know at that time, okay, well, it is doomed for failure because, the customs and things like that. I had no idea. So, talked to 7 or 8 of my friends, so whatever we had borrowed, and then we had assembled about, I think it was probably about $50,000 or something like that, but that was my startup capital. And we shipped a container of 50 computers, right? And apparently, that was the largest shipment of computers received in Trivandrum. And I came to know that later, until then, right? So, and my partner here said, no, okay, I've arranged everything at the airport, customs and all that. So, and I didn't want to know what it is, so, but we had arranged technically, so we would, unfortunately, or it was planned, that guy didn't show up when the shipment arrived. And then they decided to apply duty, import duty on every computer. And they used a table that was published in 1983 and since never updated. And at that time, in 1983, a computer cost a fortune, right? So if they were to charge duty on it, the business is pretty much done at that point. So anyway, they did that, and I sold every computer at a loss, 3 times loss, right? So I knew, I was not going to return it, but it was my friends, who were investors, so I got to figure out a way to make it whole, right? So that was, even though it was a separate business, I felt, when you borrow money from people, you got to find a way to return it. So it started with that, starting in a deep hole. That would be it. But then I started pitching to various investors. And while this was going on, I was, I would go show up in Santal Road and go and I was naive, so I did every crazy thing, that you can think. I'd show up and, show me a business plan. And I would say, no, I don't have one. I think there is this great business idea, right? But you can reject it left and right. So I remember Vinod Khosla at that time was one of the biggest investors. And he was the only one actually replied back to me. Like I wrote to him and he said, you know what, it's not a good fit for me, but good luck to you, right? So started with, I would have probably pitched to 50 people and, had nothing to show for it, but, you don't give up, right? So then, I started thinking about my life as well, so I got to get married, I was in love with someone, and, there I had a perfect record, so we didn't get rejection, but I said, we'll get married, but I'll be broke. Are you okay with that? And she said, fine, because we will start a family together, and by then I would be broke. So I had 3-4 years to work through, right? And that was the time that I had available, right? So I could do all the crazy things that I want. So I had this one job at HP where I was building their Java compiler, right? So I built their Java compiler that runs on printers and scanners and things like that. So that job allowed me to support a team of 5 people in Trivandrum, right? So 6 months later, as we were experimenting various things, the team, the one thing about the teams, that every entrepreneur should keep in mind is, the teams are something, that it's an organism. It just keeps growing, right? And so in my case, the team grew to 10 people, and I didn't have a way of supporting it, right? And all my investors were, all the people that I was pitching, was pretty much, kicking me out, right? So then I was down to how do I make it work. I thought my 8 hours work I could get done in 6 hours. So that meant if I had one more job, I could probably support it. So the same day, one of my former colleagues at that time, moved to another company. and I called on her and said, hey, I have this problem. I need one more job. And she said, oh, for you, why don't you come on over, right? I'll arrange you for a meeting with my manager, her manager. So I went there, got one more job. So I got my problem solved for, and I thought I could manage two jobs. It was fine. Like I took work very, very seriously wherever I worked, because that's, the one thing that irritates me more than anything is people goofing off. Right? I just don't tolerate that, because opportunity. There are so many people who just don't have the opportunity, and if you're given that opportunity and you just don't take it seriously, that's gross injustice that you're doing to the other person who didn't have that opportunity, right? So so I did two jobs, and then again the living organism this team is, right? It became 20 people before I know it, and there's always a reason for why you need 20 people, right? So I had to find one more job, right? So my current manager at that time at HP, he decided to move to another company. And so I called him, right? And I said, hey, I have this team and we are doing some cool things, but I need one more job. So he said, oh, fine, when you come on over, right? So that afternoon I had one more job. So effectively I had 3 jobs. But I felt good. Right? I felt great actually. The reason for that is I could manage a team of 20 here.
Babu, I think tomorrow the headlines could be ex-president of Envestnet confesses to moonlighting.
There's nothing wrong with moonlighting, by the way. Right? Again, you take, what feeds you, you take that seriously, right? And then you pursue your passion. So you don't, everywhere where I worked, that's why when I asked for the second or third job, I have done more than what they expected of me. I was always there. I went to HP and I would stay up there till 1 o'clock because I was walking home anyway, right? So I would spend as much time, there. So the third job, so obviously now I got to navigate how you do these 3 jobs. So I started at 6 o'clock, from 6 to 11:30. That would be my first job, right? And then it's about 45 minutes or 45 miles from there to the second job. So 3 traffic lights along the way. I timed it so perfectly that I could have my lunch in the car. And three lights, that's very predictable, right? So that's where I had my lunch. Got that second job done, and by around 5:30 I would wrap up. And then another 45 minutes drive going up north again. If you're familiar with Silicon Valley, it's like a triangle, right? So I started from the bottom, right? From south, went up, came back, went this way. And I would wrap up by around 12:30, 1, and come home, literally burned out. That was it. It will suck every bit of energy out of you. But I did that for a year and a half, right? And that's what built me up. That's what also taught me, you don't have, that is one thing you have. You have your own intellectual capital. You are your own venture capital. And, 3 jobs built, ability for me to support teams. And along the way, as I was doing this, I teamed up with my mentor, Mohan Anand, he's also from here. So we worked on a patent application, which the idea was that we would take any piece of software and make it subscription. And we thought that was a great idea, like everybody would have, because we really believe that the software will be subscription. And this was a long time ago, right? When that seemed like a alien idea, right? Because Microsoft and all these other big companies, they would sell you a package and they would sell you upgrades every year. So it was like $300 subscription, right? And we thought everybody will like our idea, but software industry had a very different perspective. They didn't like it at all, right? And so we were looking for an application of that patent, and in the process, we found an opportunity with the Postal Service, and they were looking for a solution to a problem that they had, which was a $7 billion problem for them, because people would copy stamps. And so we thought of our software of our patent, which allows you to put postage on the cloud, and as you need it, a barcode-based mechanism. So you are effectively leasing postage. So that was our application. And again, we struggled for a while. I had our team, in Trivandrum, building the product, and we struggled early on, but then eventually we made it. We struggled to raise a couple of $1 million. By then, I had more experience and things like that. We had more people, and from $2 million, we became a public company in no time. So that was luck, pure luck. We were in the right place at the right time, and we were a public company with stamps.com in no time. So while at stamps.com, so as the company was going public, obviously we don't know anything about being a public company or things like we were just builders, right? So and you need public company experience.
So which year was this?
This was 97.
97.
Yeah.
So is it technically okay to say that probably you are the first Indian company to get listed in NASDAQ?
I wouldn't make such bold claims, and I don't know, right? So, again, I was not even thinking about that, right? So we worked hard to build an online postage platform. The product was even in the market. That was one of those crazy times, back in 97, when companies with no product will actually go public, right? And everybody will come to us. And so we struggled a bit to get that initial funding. We appreciated a lot of investors. We somehow finally managed to get a couple of $1 million and give away a large portion of this company. But from there, in about 12 months, we were a public company. That's, it was like an alternate universe. In the first year or so, we would struggle, and Postal Service came to our office and asked them to show around the office. And I still remember, they'd say, "Oh, give us the office too," right? And we had this kind of a space, and we said, "Yeah, this is the office." There's and they said, "No, there is no way. If you're working with the Postal Service, you got to go get a better place." So I had to, we had to go and get venture capital, but finally it was struggling. It was just difficult, but we managed to get it. So as Stamps.com towards the company was going public, and we had an even bigger idea at that time. So we thought, anyway, they need people with public company experience. So Mohan, myself, and a few others, we decided to leave and pursue this other idea, which was using the same technology for entertainment. We happened to share an office with then retired president of 20th Century Fox, and he convinced us that he had just retired at that time, and we were all in our early 20s, and we were creating all this stuff, and he liked us, and he said, "Hey, what you have today, this ability to do subscription, let's take that and apply that to entertainment." So we had what would later become Netflix on demand, but we just couldn't pull it off. That's my biggest disappointment in my life, right? So we were trying to make this subscription, product, which I thought, Stamps was okay, but it's not something that I would use every single day. But something like coming home every day, browsing a catalog and watching a movie. I'm a big movie watcher, so that appealed to me. Like I was like, jumped in, leaving a company that's supported by public is not easy. Like that's something that you created. But this appealed to me a lot more, right? So we said, okay, let's go make that happen. But just when we had the product ready and we were about to, and this time, we did something. This time, money started chasing us, right? So the word was out that us, we were leaving stamps, and so this time raising money was not a problem, right? Because a lot of people wanted to make a bet on us, right? So, but just when and this time we said, no, we don't need money, we have the money now, right? So a big mistake, when capital comes calling on you, like you take it, like because you cannot predict the future, right? So, but 99, early part of 99, just when we had the product in, sort of like an alpha version, and now we needed the money because building a consumer business takes a lot of money. Like, not in building the product, but getting the marketing right, getting awareness created and all that. That sales and marketing will cost you a lot of money. And just when we had the product, the market tanked, .com crash, and we just couldn't get off the ground. So that was the time. So I thought, okay, I tried. I'm not bankrupt yet, but very close to it. Seemed like a good time to get married. So in 99 we got married, and I wanted to pursue my next dream, and that was Envestnet. So it was an accidental discovery. I visited a friend of mine, and we happened to visit a financial advisor, and I could see stacks of people and nothing else, right? And they were working on one application, then they would take data from there, key it into the next application, etc. So I thought, okay, well, that is a very old way, right? And there is a subscription software business so that you could build out of that. So we decided to start a company, focused on wealth management. Financial advisors would be our target client, and we would create a wealth management platform end to end. And the same team, that here we moved, the video distribution venture didn't take off, but the team was there. So we started to focus on what is known as Envestnet. Envestnet has been a fascinating journey, especially because that's one where I felt really I created something. Stamps.com, you get lucky. I'm somebody, I need to, I tell all of my colleagues, let's not get anything easy, right? Because it doesn't build character. You need to learn it, right? So Stamps.com, it gave us money, which I spent already, right? But so I had to restart. But Stamps.com didn't feel like you really earned it. So Envestnet was everywhere 20 years. So this time I was starting Envestnet, and I said, oh, Stamps.com was a 2 years game. It didn't feel right to me. No matter what happens, I'll persist for 20 years. So 99 September I started, and I spent 20 years. So officially retired from Envestnet on my 20th year anniversary. So so Envestnet was a simple idea. At that time, fintech as a category didn't exist. So today, if you look at where is the money going, a lot of money went to fintech. At that time, we again had a challenge, right? Who do you pitch to? Most people didn't understand fintech. So we had one investor who really understood what we were doing because they came from financial services. So they gave us the initial check. The founder of that fund is a great friend of mine over 20 years. So we have built a lot of, we built a phenomenal friendship. And so we struggled early on. We built a team, all the product. So I spent a lot of time here. So building a product is very, very different than building projects or completing projects and things like that. It takes a very different DNA to build a product. You don't need a lot of people. You need 4 to 5 people. That's all you need to create that foundation. And so we had the team here, so we built a wealth management platform from Trivandrum. That gives you immense satisfaction. Today I look back, we're processing about $6-7 trillion worth of assets every single day. To know that the foundation, the first line of code for that was written from here, that is foundation. That's the one thing that I can hang your hat on every day, thinking about, wow, that we did that. And struggled a bit, early on, when we ran out of money a couple of times, and in US, you run out of money, you file a bunch of big slips, you hand over big slips to people, and that's how you do it. But in a place like Trivandrum, how do you do that? I just couldn't go through that. So I told, for a while, when we ran out of money, I started writing personal checks, for about 4 or 5 months in between. But I knew things will work our way. And again, I was getting very close to getting broke because I was funding whatever little savings I had. But eventually, out of necessity, we decided to merge with our biggest competitor. We both were struggling. When Envestnet was started, there were about 50 companies that was trying to solve the same problem. And in fact, interesting companies, there was a company by the name Run Money. And they literally ran out of money, so a bunch of companies, 50 companies, all of them went out. Well, a lot of them went out. And we were, out of necessity, we decided to merge with my biggest competitor at that time, became great friends, partners, a partner to Trivandrum, former CEO of Envestnet, a person by the name Chairperson. Deeply cared about Trivandrum. He came here with me before we signed the deal. We came and he fell in love with the city and fell in love with what I had created by then. And so we built a phenomenal name out of Trivandrum, right? So largest wealth management company in the world, and that's something that I'm extremely proud of. So after I was going to retire from there, I was knocking on 50. So when you cross that 50, I don't know if you could start one more. Right? But once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur, right? So I only told you the success stories. Along the way, I had to fail 17 times. I would spend on an idea, spend 3 months, didn't work, moved on. Right? There were about 17 different ideas, that at some point I tried and didn't make it. But all through my journey, I've somehow managed to resonate with my fellow entrepreneurs, their struggles, and that was something. Not that I had a lot of capital. Like, believe me, a lot of people think that I have a lot of money and a lot of resources. I don't, right? So because you make bets that you deploy, and sometimes you get lucky. I was one of those investment philosophy people who followed the investment philosophy. What a spray and pray strategy is. Which is you spray whatever you have, and then hope that something will, you pray something will work out. So a lot of people ask me, you seem to be a great investor. I'll say no, I'm not a great investor at all. I resonate with people who struggle. If there is capital, if there is, I've always believed, I could live in without spending a lot of money, but then I've always found a way to use my salary to invest in things, So very early on, like back in those days when I was building stamps and Envestnet, I started getting involved in the Indian startup ecosystem, one way or the other. Took the journey with some phenomenal entrepreneurs. So that was something that I've always done, right? So always the notion of that garage attracts me, right? And because that's where the future is always built. It's not on the corner rooms or glass, with glass windows. That's not where the future is built. Future is built in crappy places where people who are driven, motivated, want to make a change, and you put your effort, and nothing comes between you and that eventual goal. And that's a deep belief I have. So I've told a lot of people, I told my wife, that look, this is my last, so I'm on a final journey with a company called Jiffy.ai. So we are a low-code platform. So for a computer science major, I hated the idea of sitting there and doing coding, right? Because I've always thought that is something machines should do, right? And we should just tell the machines what to do, right? And so we are on a mission to solve that, and early stages of our journey. And this time I traveled around the country. The third and final thing, I just know that's probably the last thing I do, right? So, and this time I wanted to complete two things, or win. The first two times, I didn't get a chance. I've always been wanting to combine social responsibility with innovation. And if you are investing in AI and if you're creating disruptive technologies, then you are disrupting somebody. So I wanted to do it in a methodical, meaningful, in a fashion that combines social responsibility with innovation. So Jiffy is a special journey. This time, we would disrupt big time, right? But then we would also, on the other side, do something about the disruption that we cause, right? So Jiffy is special that way. Largest shareholder in the company is the foundation, right? So on one end, we would be ruthless about disruption. On the other end, we would deploy all of that wealth that we create towards uplifting people, the very people that we might end up disrupting, right? So change is good, because it's positive. It is, change will happen, right? But what we do need to worry about as entrepreneurs, as disruptors, as innovators, we are building on the backs of somebody, right? So we have a moral obligation to invest in those people, get them, to that next wave of technology. There is a skill gap that you find, and then so we are on that special journey. On one end, we are ruthless about disruption. On the other end, we are trying to do something about this very disruption that we cause. And we will invest deeply in the people, upskilling those people, very same people, and see what we could do, and get on that journey. So it is a very rewarding journey, right? So I thought a lot about I would be 70 and I retire, and I look in that. You have to, as an entrepreneur, you're always hopeful. Like if you're going to build another $1 billion company, and then you think back, and hey, I should have thought about the people who I disrupted and things like that. So this way, I will have no regrets. So when you're 70 and look back, you cannot change your past. So this one seems very, very special to me, and that's the journey.
I really feel this is a story that should be documented, especially building two publicly listed companies from here, right? This is I don't think we ever thought about this, right? you always know that, okay, looking from Kerala, looking from Trivandrum is very difficult. And here is a guy who did it twice. But I understand you had 17 failed ideas, so 30 plus 4, 21. So probably that is the ratio to get two publicly listed companies.
If you're a baseball player, that's a terrible record.
So, Babu, okay, you're a very good author, right? We all recognize that. But there are some things that are not known to others about how you supported other companies, not just as an investor, right? So, in the case of Carestack, we know about Carestack as a very successful startup company. But I know for sure that you had a lot of time and effort mentoring Abhi, right? Whenever he went through rough patches, and I think you are the guy he was good. Tell us a bit about your experience in supporting startups. I'm not talking about the financial aspect, but from other side of things, like the emotional, the forward support.
Yeah, when you talk about companies and their journey, startups, the number one risk that a company faces, you know what the number one risk? Running out of money. That is the number one risk, because when you have a path, right? But that path, early on, you are not generating enough revenue to support yourself, right? So you need that money. And most companies, number one reason you fail is running out of money. So just last week, I was with at least close to 50 entrepreneurs. You all know about Silicon Valley Bank failing. Now that is the number one bank for every startup, right? Now, so you're talk about running out of money, but here you have the money, it is in a checking account, and you can't access it. And everybody needs to pay salaries for this week. This week, you would have seen so many companies fail, if not for the government action to support all the depositors. There was billions of dollars and thousands of companies. And so you do have things like that happen. You only see success at the end of the day, right? After 20 years, 15 years, whatever it is. But there are near-death experiences every company goes through, like most companies go through. And you have to, if you're, one of the things that I personally felt, the need for emotional support, right? When you go through difficulties. So this one, a number of companies that we all know very well, well-funded companies, would have failed this week because we would have run out of money. And then a lot of companies did have Silicon Valley Bank as their private, the only bank that you put money in. I mean, your deposits are there, and if you, especially in the US, if you don't make payroll, it's not a forgiving place, So people leave, right? And there goes the company, right? So with entrepreneurs, the number one challenge that I found is the continued focus on the product. You start thinking too far ahead before you get that great product working, right? So, and first couple of years, your number one focus has to be getting that product made, so in that journey, I would spend time, trying to understand, the product, trying to, I'm a product guy, right? So that's one thing, that I could offer, right? So I spend a lot of time with the entrepreneurs, trying to get that product right. Then along the way, you would run into situations. There are a lot of situations, near-death experiences, where these things happen, like out of nowhere. Like in the case of Carestack, for example, Abby, suddenly being in a coma, for example, right? So here's a guy. We're about a month away from running out of money, and we need to get the next round of capital, and the founder goes into a coma, and those kind of things happen, and you just have to be there. You cannot really say what you're going to do. Right? You just need to know that you're going to be there. Right? Because maybe these are unpredictable. You don't know what exactly that need is. Needs happen, and at that time you have to have the will to figure it out and be there for the founder.
Being with the founder.
Being with the founders. So one of the things, so when you have investors and professional investors and things like that, not every investor will be founder friendly, right? So at the end of the day, you promise the moon, and they are expecting the moon from you, right? You put decks out there saying that okay, you're going to bring the billions, right? At the moment you put money in, they are expecting that. You get that money. And when you don't see that, it's a terrible world, so you need, but entrepreneurs, they're phenomenal people, right? So, and you just need to be there, right? So that is my role that I've played in a number of companies, being there, that founder friendly. I'm an investor too, but that founder friendly person, right? Only because I know what it means. It's building a company is no joke. It's one of the hardest things. So people who persevere and continue to go at it, I have a lot of respect for them.
One question that I have on behalf of these people, how should they approach you? Not just as an investor, as a mentor, how should they approach you? And what is the process you usually take founders through? So I've seen you working closely with founders to prepare their investment. Investor data. I've seen that sometimes when I some startups. So how should they approach you, and how do you take them forward?
Yeah.
What are the criteria for you choosing which startup?
Yeah. So people who know me, I don't have a criteria. I'm a terrible investor. I cannot predict whether you will be successful or not. And my track record doesn't sound great. There are a lot of investors who are great at picking great companies, phenomenal entrepreneurs and things like that. I'm not that. I'm somebody who resonate with somebody who's struggling, right, and trying to figure out a way through, right. So there are companies that I wanted to invest, that I could not find the time. So the one thing, you're trying to balance your family and your friends and your primary job, which has to be your number one priority, right? So for example, I've taken money from my investors, friends, and everybody I know for Jiffy. So the number one priority has to be, making Jiffy successful, right? Like if anything else comes in the way, it will be the number one priority is that, my family or there isn't a single day that remind me that how terrible I am as a father or as a husband, right? Or that I'm not I'm not giving enough time for them. Not that I'm not giving time, but almost the time is what you don't have. Only 24 hours. I sleep 4 hours per day or 4.5 hours per day. I've been doing that for 30 years. Right? It is. So the lack of time is one reason why I'm not, I'm not able to participate in something, right? But in general, good ideas, I do spend time, trying to guide people, trying to get to a point where they have something that's on a right path, right? And those are things, that, you've been blessed, right? So you just, it's part of giving it back, right? So now going back to your question, anybody who's willing to work with my constraints on time, I've always found a way to work with that.
Well, so I think it's time for us to open up. From audience, shoot your questions or thoughts.
So founders look up to you, like I heard him say, for promotional support and things like that. So who do you look forward to? Like when you have successful days or when you have very difficult days?
Yeah. So I was just, there were times when I felt, if I had somebody that I could share my burden with. There were times when nothing was going for me, right? And you stare at a negative bank balance, and I've been through that journey multiple phases, right? But these days I have a lot of friends, my own family, who can give me advice. You're always learning. There is no not a lot of people today that I'm able to reach out to, right? But in general, there were times when I felt that even at that time I was solved by myself.
So my question. So how did you handle burnouts during your initial phase of your career and entrepreneurship?
So this is where I learn a lot from history. One thing, we will all make mistakes, and we have to learn from those mistakes. So one of the things I never try to do is repeat the mistakes. If I find myself in a similar situation, I try to not make the same mistake. So, yeah, as I was going through those journey, there were times when I struggled with, but then being able to look back at what has happened, what kind of problems that you face, where you made the mistake, and try to apply something different this time. And that's one way I try to navigate that, as I'm faced with such challenges.
Good afternoon, Babu sir. How are you?
Good.
I know you created the largest wealth management solution, but today at age, I believe 70, you said.
No, I'm not 70. I look 70, but I'm in my 50s.
Okay. Philosophically, what does wealth mean to you today?
Ultimately, you're not going to take anything with you, right? That is, you came empty, you're going to leave empty. For me, wealth means that you want to live the life to the fullest and have a lot of friends, that, when you get to that point eventually, you can burn too many bridges along the way. It's hard to do, right? But be there for people and get to a point eventually. Because I've always believed in I'll tell you this example, right? So, a financial advisor came. I serve a financial advisor community. So, a financial advisor came to me and started planning my future and said, okay, here's the path to a billionaire, and I decided to do everything against his guidance, because that's not the path that I want. So that to me is just happiness, just being, one thing I'm passionate about is, I'm passionate about Trivandrum, I'm passionate about Kerala, I want to do a lot of things here. I do believe, we need a lot more entrepreneurs to come out of places like this, and this is the future, right? So I do want to work very closely with the ecosystem.
Is it right to say time is wealth?
Time is wealth, absolutely. If I had another 24 hours a day, I could do a lot more stuff. So time is, yeah, absolutely. Time is wealth. And health is wealth too. Even though I don't take that advice, so I should.
So one question. So when you talk to founders, when you offer them advice or any letter, you talk to them carrying on your experience and your wisdom, which they don't have always. Do you think they understand you correctly on that?
Not all the time, because sometimes that could be brutal, right? Because for example, telling a founder that you need to downsize your team, that's the most difficult thing that a founder wants to hear, right? But sometimes you do need to be smaller, right? When you have a bigger team, like you already have too many problems, that sometimes you need to start over and just be yourself and one more person, but you do need to go through that journey. Like that's tough to tell a founder, but sometimes that's probably what is needed. Because nailing the product, is important before you get to that next journey of scaling, right? A lot of times, you get into situations where you try to scale before you got the basics right. Now, I'll tell you, I've made that mistake many times, including Jiffy, I've made that mistake, right? Where I thought, okay, well, I'm already big, I can scale. But then you look back and realize that, no, you don't have that right product yet. Right? So you got to go back and build that before you can scale.
Hi, Joseph. Now that you are in the AI business, let me ask the question. So what's your take on ChatGPT and how it's going to disrupt the market? We were learning about ChatGPT and now the newer version is
Yeah.
here. Right? So every day it's changing. It's changing. Last week we were talking, Japan we were talking, we don't know as an up market.
Yeah.
It's going to disrupt the SEO market forever. Maybe that's what I don't know. But what's your take on that?
So ChatGPT is probably the single most innovative and transformative, change in technology. The large language models and what it is capable of doing. So we've been talking AI for a long time. It's like, so I'll compare that to, we all grew up as babies, kids, along the way, we have understood patterns, we have learned to look at a bottle of glass and water and say that's a bottle of water. We used to recognize things. But then as you grow, you start comprehending things and you become innovative. And that innovative, creative moment of AI is here. And that is hugely disruptive. There isn't a business that I don't think will not be disrupted by this innovation. Because a machine having the entire world's information and being able to learn from it and being able to be creative, it has never been done before, right? So that, I would say that it's as big as the internet itself. When internet became so, mainstream, that is that's the kind of impact that the OpenAI innovations of the large language models will have on the future. And the fundamental, and the most potentially destructive as well, right? Because for the first time, you would really have to figure out how to distinguish real from fake. And that is, fundamentally what we used to think as facts. Hearing a voice, hearing a face, these are things, that you thought were facts, right? You can build everything around it, a certain set of facts. Now, for the first time, those fundamental facts are in question, right? I think in the next 20 years, you would see innovation that you haven't seen in 2,000 years, right? That's the potential impact, some of the innovations in AI that is happening now, that's going to happen in our life. And fascinated by it, we do something similar when it comes to deploying software and creating software and things like that. And I'm thrilled to see ChatGPT writing code, right? And we do similar things to deploy software on the fly, right? So it is transformative, but it will make it so difficult for law enforcement and people in certain businesses where this could be potentially disruptive in a big way, where we haven't quite figured out how we handle it.
Hello, my name is Jiffy, and I am an ex-MSc. So nowadays it's told like the hustle culture is toxic. As a guy who had hustled a lot, what's your thoughts on that?
Hustle culture is never toxic. You have to hustle in life, right? The moment you stop hustling, we as humanity start the phase of decay, right? Because of that energy, that real need to because solutions aren't easy. You have to hustle, right? You have to continue to, as an entrepreneur, that's the one thing that you do all the time. You don't take no for an answer. I'll give you an example with Envestnet, right? Our first client, they spent time with us, they spent time with our competitor. Our competitor had a great product. They were already in the business. And we were just people who didn't know what we were building, right? None of us came from wealth management, except for a couple of our founders, but in general, the team wasn't from wealth management. So after 3 months of doing a pilot and evaluation and things like that, our first client decided, they called us in an evening, around 3 o'clock and said, thank you so much, we enjoyed working with you, right? But we're going to go in a different direction. We have decided to go with this other vendor. And the reason is obvious, because we were showing, imagine this, and they would actually show the actual stuff, right? So I would get on calls and imagine if you had this thing, where the ability to rebalance would be here, right? And then the other company is showing rebalancing in action, right? So that evening when they let us know, and we would have never gotten off the ground, by the way, because you need that first client, the second client, the first 5 clients are golden, they're like God for a startup. So that evening we took a flight to Winnipeg. That's where the founder of that company was. We showed up, and the morning we said, "Hey, can we meet for breakfast?" And he was shocked when we showed up there because he was not even part of the decision making. He delegated that to at large team, and he's the founder of First Client. Was the person who built the largest wealth management company in Canada. So, and then we showed up and we met for breakfast, and he said, "I like the energy. I like the, I like the fact that you guys showed up, right?" And then he gave us a whole set of conditions as to what needs to be met. He will give us the business, but he needed 5 things in return, which all of those were acceptable to us. And he's a great friend, even after 30 years. He's doing phenomenally well. But if you ask him today, he would say that's one of the proudest decisions that he has ever made. And that competitor of ours is nowhere to be seen. And so, and that is us. And we could have sat back and said, okay, it doesn't work, right? Blame the fate and all that, which we always admit. In spite of our best efforts, there will be some times where you just can't move things, move the mountain as you hope. But that was there would be no investment. I can tell you that. If I hadn't made that trip to Winnipeg and and met with that founder and pleaded our case as to why we did not fail it, and there would be, we didn't have funding at that time, so nothing would have been possible.
I think what you just said now, it's a big lesson for startups. So, customers reject you. Actual customers reject you. But what will the next? You all like, okay, leave it. We'll go behind the next one. Persisting.
That's earlier you were asking me that question. I learned that from my 9 or 10 rejections in my job interview, right? Where I would fail, and I would go home and cry a lot, and because you go into that day, going to class, going to college, thinking that today is that day that you walk away with that job offer, and then that not happening, and because you made some stupid mistake, right? And it's not, that's disappointment. But then, it can demoralize you. It can. I've seen, I've felt so many times in my life where I've reached the lowest point in my life, and then, by the way, I do get to that even today. Right? Sometimes I feel, okay, this is probably the lowest point. I can't go any further down from here. But then you back up, you get back up tomorrow and work hard, right? So one of the reasons why people, after their first company or second company becoming successful, they don't start again, is they don't have that emotional ability or will to continue to go through that journey yet again. Most of my Envestnet colleagues, there was we were trying to run a startup with the company, right? We wanted to get into a new space, and we've all been successful, and we said, "Oh, great, we need to start this. And then the question comes, who's going to do it? And everybody was looking at each other. I thought you were doing it. I thought you were doing it. And looking at that, I thought, okay, then it's going to come around to me. But it did, So I think certain people are wired. I just always, in my mind, think I am on my first startup. I forget about all the past, and because all the past, if you have past success, so that's a number one reason for failure, because you wouldn't think of that first client with the kind of respect, and you would feel entitled that you are successful, you've done this. Customer, the first client or your clients could care less. They don't care about what you've done in the past. You have the same chance. In fact, if I'm going up against one of you, I would be the most worried, right? Because you would have a much better chance than me. Because I would have some of this entitled feeling that, okay, well, I deserve it. No, you don't. And I always try to tell myself, every day waking up in the mirror, and I'm just the same guy from 30 years ago, right? If you don't have that mindset, then you're not going to win.
Sweet. Babu, this is not a question. I thought I'd just share a couple of thoughts. As you mentioned, we started our careers together. So I didn't know that, but I'm glad to hear that your first job was in the same batch with me. I think we got in from CET campus interview, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You were at BTech and I was in MCA, so I was a couple of years. I'm a couple of years older than you, and it's crazy, like you said. Thinking back to those years, it's 92, 93, right? Around the time. So the early stage of Technopark, when there's no Technopark, the building opposite Waterworks, the State Bank of India building right now, that's the IMR office. So we have 5 or 6 people in the batch, and Babu was the youngest person in the group, and it was already known at that time this guy is different. Okay, in the batch. But very skinny. I was also skinny at the time, so hard to believe. But very jovial and very down to earth, right? There's not a nicer person in the group. And yes, he was crazy to spend all the time in the lab working all the stuff. And I know that you used to sleep in the office, etc. I used to live very close to the office, so I didn't have to sleep in the office. But at that point of time itself, we knew that this guy is different and he's going to go places. And I heard you say, mention luck, being at the right place at the right time, all those things. But that's not always true, right? This is 30 years of hard work, 30 years of doing the right thing consistently, right? That's tenacity. It's not luck. Luck follows when you do that, right? And behind all that is a talent, right? The talent is there, and then he adds the effort to it and continues and tenaciously for decades, right? That's what people will call luck, or being at the right place at the right time, right? So it is not that, and it's a true characteristics of any successful entrepreneur. I'm glad that you mentioned about the failures. Right? People see only the successes, but behind every success there is probably a dozen failures, right? So I'm just happy, when I heard this, I just came back from US yesterday and I saw this thing, your name here, and I said I'd just come and meet you. So wonderful, glad to be associated with you, and look forward to meeting you in future also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
By the way, how many of you know Suri? Okay, so Suri is another entrepreneur from Trivandrum, really made it big, and he has supported so many startups as well. But very shy guy. You're very shy, right? Don't come to open. But trust me, he has supported many startups financially, otherwise. Very humble guy. Actually, Trivandrum is blessed with people like Babu and Suri. Only thing is, startups here don't try to reach out to these people. Right? So we cannot go to Saudi Junction and say that, okay, come, maybe start up around, right? So it's for the startups to figure this out. I have a complaint about the startup ecosystem here that we are not doing a good job on that part. We are not identifying our markets. When we are happy to travel to Bangalore and around HSR looking for vendors and investors, there are people around here.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. My name is Hari Kumar, I'm a journalist. Couple of questions to you.
Actually, why don't you come?
It's okay. I'll stand up. Oh, that's what you want. Okay. ChatGPT, we are talking about it. One thought that came to me is like, have we built enough guardrails on that one? Or are we rushing into it headlong? That the LLM models are already in 4chan and access to everyone. So that's the first part. Second is what just Robert referred now about Trivandrum. You would passionate about Trivandrum, Canada, and IT. What would you like to see change among the startup community and generally in the city and the people's attitude? Cheers.
All right. So first question, I don't think enough guardrails have been put in place. This is such a phenomenal technology, and it needs to be done with care. This is the only one that I'm normally somebody who would welcome change. Like we'll break things and we'll figure out a way to sustain and find a model. But this one has so much potential and potential for misuse. And I do worry about the law enforcement and people like that, where, how do you deal with such potential, especially online? These days the crime happens online. People's savings get wiped out online, right? And so the potential misuse that could happen, right? And you could be receiving a call from your wife, you think it is your wife, and it would know everything almost about you, right? Because everybody's life is online today. There isn't any privacy, because you've already given away privacy to larger firms, so that we want that better service. So you do worry about potentially disruptive, things that could be tried, and then it's so hard to know what is true versus what is this fake. So that is the number one thing that I worry about, right? And not being able to differentiate facts from fiction, right? So everybody recognizes that. If you remember, like Elon Musk says, this is something that he worries about, and he's somebody who doesn't worry about anything in the world, right? So he worries about this better. We all worry about it, but it's fascinating technology. We should. It needs to be embraced, but it needs to be embraced with care, right? So I hope the big beneficiaries of this will take the time and do the right things to regulate it, to put guardrails in it, so that we can see the positive side of things. And can you remind me the second question? Yeah, Trivandrum. Yeah. So India has so much potential. I'll tell you that, right? Because we are young, a very young country, and nobody likes China these days. People don't trust China. And I'm speaking from I'm an American citizen now, right? And I know I talk to so many people. They all say there's one country in the world that they don't trust, and that is China. And so they have built that reputation, and their own people don't trust them, right? Their own people, I know Chinese people who want to make sure they put their money outside of China, right? So they go and buy all the crazy investments out there. Because if you hold on to Chinese currency, you're depreciating your value by 10% or something like that every year. And so for them, just being in US dollar is you're gaining. So, and that presents a unique opportunity for India in general, like where the world is looking for an alternative to China. And I hope our people, right, our leaders, don't play petty politics with this and seize that opportunity. But this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for India, right? And I hope that opportunity is seized, right? That opportunity is understood, and we capitalize on it. And traditionally, we play petty politics with such opportunities, So now, what are we missing, right? So one thing I see, the talent level between a US fresh graduate and a fresh graduate out of India, there is a big talent level difference. And I know elite institutions aside, right? But in general, what is done by a college student there, and what is done by the level of practical ability to do things, there seems to be a real difference. So we need to elevate our skill set big time, here, right? Because I struggled through my life, right? Where I'm educated here as well, right? But that 1 year of experience in US made a huge difference for me. Like being able to work with other people who build products, for example, other great engineers. Engineering is something, ultimately, great engineers build great companies, great products in a great country. You have to be able to build stuff, right? You have to, and our ability to build stuff starts at school and colleges, and I do think we need our skill sets need to be a lot better than what it is today, right? And one way I navigated is spending a lot of time here. So I do spend a lot of time with engineers looking at the code and reviewing the code, being frustrated with them and sharing that feedback. And that is important, right? Because people with experience need to commit that time at the core, right? So you're looking at a company, for example, Google. You look at Google, it is that search algorithm which is probably 200 lines of code or maybe 1,000 lines of code. That's what that company is all about. That is what that Google is. If you look at their revenues, 90% comes from search. And what is so special about that search, nobody has figured out. It is that special 1,000 lines of code. So you need people to be able to build great technology, and we need to continue to invest in that. We need to continue to spend time, and one thing that used to disappoint me is like, I've seen phenomenal engineers. When I'll give you, I was talking to, my classmates, there were about 40 of them, and I thought there were 25 good engineers, right? I was talking to one of them who told me that, I forgot all that 20 years ago. And I'm like, dude, that's a crime, for what you were able to do and what you're doing now, right? Now, if we start measuring success based on the number of bodies that we're managing, that's exactly what you'll get. You'll get phenomenal talent being directed towards other things, so that, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. It doesn't build a single great thing.
Babu, thank you for sharing your incredible story. I resonate with Suri. It's not an easy thing, so you scale. And I think, like Robin said, your story should be cherished here. We need to celebrate you also. You built such an amazing, built the greatest, one of the greatest from this place. So my question is also related to it. So when I say it's not an easy journey, so there are two parts to it. One, your founding team. So we work on the talent side, like you said, and this also, a part of that. So one thing is how did you, pick your founding team? I know it's not an easy thing, just about people coming, grow and all that. How do you motivate and inspire them? Okay. And B, scaling from Trivandrum, I don't think there are doing stories. There are a lot of companies who founded here, then they chose other places, went to Bangalore, and then they potentially scaled them. So your market was obviously US, but then I think predominantly your team, people, workforce, everything was here. So it was really built here. So how did you scale your team? How did you, that DNA you said, right? So how do you pick that in people, and how do you, when you scale is a different model. So how did you make sure that also is, what are the learnings?
Yeah, I think, again, I don't know if I would be a great example to replicate, because, I've gone against conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom, when you're starting a great team, needs to be complementary skills. One person needs to be great at engineering, another person needs to be great at marketing, a third person needs to be great at attracting talent, and you look for very complementary skills, which is what I believe as well. But sometimes, it's like getting married, right? Your team is like when you're committed for a long time, right? And when you look for your life partner, you're not just looking for complementary, what you like. You don't go like that, right? Then that marriage would be a disaster, right? You want some wavelength. You want to be on the same page. So, in the past, when I don't know if I went by really, complementary skills and things like that. Generally, you looked at one thing that you need to know for sure, when going gets tough, is that person going to be around? That's number one, because you're guaranteed things will be tough along the way. There are people, the moment the first struggle comes along, right, they fail. And I have had that experience. When I started my first company, I had 4 other partners, and it was, they were all silent. They all liked it and loved the fact that we can be called founders and things like that. But then they were all silent partners, and it was difficult for me, like, because of it, if your friends and you don't want to tell them, like you don't want it to affect your friendship, but silent partners, and they know the kind of struggle that I'm going through because they see me every day, right? But still, it was important for them getting married and being able to say that I work for a bigger company, was important to them. So I felt, I made a terrible mistake. That was a talent. These things you will figure out along the way. But when going gets tough, there were one of those low points that I talked about where I felt I'm the only one. We were 5 people trying to build this, and it became my responsibility because they all contributed a little capital as well. So it became my responsibility to make sure eventually they get a return, because you have to treat them like an investor. So I shut down that company after I got to a point where I was able to get a return for that. And then decided to, it was a happy ending because I borrowed money for that failed or misadventure of our business. So, but going will get tough, and it comes fast, right? And it happens multiple times along the journey, right? So you need to be able to lean on that, right? And, a load is something that is always better shared, because it is easy and you need to make sure we have open dialogue, right? What is it that they are trying to achieve? Where do they see themselves 5 years, 10 years out? Because building a company takes a good 10 years, right, or more. And I believe it takes 20 years. So that's a long journey, right?
How do you motivate and inspire your, not just the founding team, your co-founders, but then the first team that you have, right?
Yeah.
So they don't have a brand to follow. It's just how do you inspire them and stay together? You have rough patches, and then you convince them that maybe you're going to be there.
Yeah.
You might have that vision. You might see it there in front, but then how do you communicate?
It's a constant process. I'm still doing it. Where you get crappy stuff, and you want a certain level of perfection, and you continue to be unhappy. And share that feedback, and where that future, what that future might look like. So that's a constant process. And I don't think you can have an offsite and you'll figure it out. It's every day. Every day, in a startup, things move really, really fast. So what do you want to accomplish in a day? In a regular big company, if you achieve something in a week, you want in a startup, you have to achieve in a few hours, right? And that is the efficiency of a small team. And because you need to experiment a lot more, because you're not starting something with tremendous amount of research and all kinds of vetting and things like that. You take a chance. So you need to fail fast, and you need to really, really get things moving really fast, right? So it's a constant struggle, but you just don't stop. You just continue to go at it. And there were times, for example, Jiffy, I had some great technologists, who have understood compilers and things like that, well enough, but always said, "Oh, that's not possible. That's not possible." I'm not the greatest technologist, by the way, right? So, but you believe in something and you continue to persist and and you also need to be willing to go a little deeper, right? You can't just be here and just make statements and proclamations and things like that. You need to really come down a level and kind of
be willing to walk through that journey and see how you might be able to solve, right? Because a lot of times inspirational talk is cheap, right? But what is important is, how do you get that done? And then can you show examples? Because when you show examples, people understand. Do we all believe that the people who started OpenAI believe this is possible, right? Now, there is somebody there who had that vision and continue to persist to get to where it is today.
I have one question. Not question. Actually, there is a random specific problem when it comes to tech. If you are not in Technopark, your chances of getting good talent, everything is good. But when it comes to Envestnet, you build it completely outside. So, was that really a challenge, or is that something like an excuse for startups?
So that's something that we thought a lot about, by the way, right? So we've always been in the city, and when we were going through, we were building a campus here, right? So and we talked to, at that time we had, I think, 200 people or so, very small at that time, and we talked to everybody, and I believe in, because at the end of the day, I could make a decision, but I don't live here, right? No, I'm not, and we want people to be able to get in, get out, come in any time, right? Because we operate a 24/7 operation, so access a lot of people who were living in and around the city. And so it was important to be closer. So we actually paid a premium to get that location and convince that landlord. He had a beautiful house, and convinced that landlord to give that space, and I believe we changed Korom Junction, by making that decision. And that's something I look for, and I'm a contrarian a lot of times. I just think differently, right? So it has never been a problem to attract talent. And we wanted to establish a brand that was different than Technopark. Technopark, everybody is known as Technopark. We work in Technopark. No, we wanted to say we work in Envestnet. That was different. And we were willing to pay a premium for that, right? And I convinced my colleagues, our CFO and people like that. Hey, we're going to spend maybe $20,000 more per month by being here, but that was something I stood up for, and it was the right thing to do, because we did a poll at that time, and 70% of the people prefer to be in the city, and you got to go with that, right? And it worked. It worked well.
It worked for you as well as for the food joints there.
Yeah.
Created a lot of direct jobs.
Yeah. No, that's the other thing, right? So, you look for a bigger impact. See, a company is not just about you. It's about making a bigger impact. It's about all those indirect things that impact. And I look at, looking at, I've always liked second tier and third tier cities, because somebody has to figure out ways to get jobs into those places. They look at Mumbai or Bangalore, they don't need you to create any jobs there. Plenty of people are already, it's working, right? So entrepreneurs like me, I should be thinking about how do I get jobs in villages, and that's why people like Sridhar, Soho founder, and others, I guess we wired a little bit differently, right? Because ultimately, you don't want too much concentration, and those places will look like hell. Like when you have too many people cramped in a small city, you want distributed development. And that's the
great thing about the technology. And he could be anywhere. You know, when Nathan talks about world is flat, it really is flat. It could be anywhere and still get things done. So, so I have, you know, this passion for second and third tier cities. If I could make a small impact, right, that's something I would continue to do.
Thank you, Doctor.
So this is something related to the ecosystem vision, especially for Kerala entrepreneurs. So I have been an entrepreneur 2 times in my company. Also, I'm mentoring a lot of startups. So one of the main challenges that we are facing is we have passionate entrepreneurs who are obsessed about an idea and is interested to build products and are building products. But when it comes to scaling that from Kerala, especially, we are having a lot of failure. Not a lot of companies are coming up in terms of scale, in terms of the customer base and the revenue side. How can we solve this as an ecosystem, and what does that work for you? And also, we have been in Silicon Valley, where there are a lot of companies which have scaled to that level. So,
yeah, so anyway, you're lucky today. Like, you know, there's tremendous amount of ability to go through that growth and scale from places in India, which was unheard of 20 years ago. It was very difficult to do. But today, there are venture capitalists and people who have raised billions of dollars looking for entrepreneurs who are building in a low-cost infrastructure, but has the ability to scale the world, right, globally. So, if you look at Zoho, if you look at Fresh Desk, they all started in small towns, right? As long as the idea is globally powerful, right? The idea, the problem that you're trying to solve has a global appeal. You can scale today. You know, it doesn't cost a lot to start a venture today, like, which is very different than 20 years ago. Before you get off the ground, you need to buy big servers and things like that, but you would spend $100,000 before you get a website up. There was a time where you have to buy expensive hardware, you have to go and host it somewhere and all that stuff. And that's not the case now. So you can literally, for $1,000 or less, you know, you can really be operational. And that, but not being able to scale today is, I would ask the question, is the problem global in nature? If the problem is global in nature, you can prove it out here and, you know, get to a certain scale and expand, because today the entirely digital world, one advantage is that people don't even know where they are. People are more than happy to consume a product or service without knowing you. As long as the product or service is really great, customer doesn't care where it is from. And that's the one thing that is different today. So there are a lot of companies where the customer thinks, you know, it's based in the US, but they are based in Indonesia, based in various parts of India, and anywhere. Like, and as long as the product has appeal, you will be able to scale, and you will get help along the way, because there are a lot of funds, you know, who have raised capital for looking for entrepreneurs who can scale, you know, who can prove and who can build very cost effectively, and then they are there to help scale, you know, because the capital is there for that.
So I would like to add something. This is based on my own experience. I'm a technology guy, and I think in Kerala we have a lot of technology experts. What we lack here is marketing experts. This is a skill that I personally lack, and I am affected by it. And I don't see an ecosystem where I can make use of, which I can make use of to learn new things about marketing and things like that. I think that is one area
lack much. We have enough and more technical guys here.
That is my point. Like, we have a lot of IT guys who knows the code.
Yeah.
But when it comes to marketing and taking the product to the right places and connecting with the right people, we are fine. So how can we as an ecosystem build towards that?
And
And
that-
do something in that.
That's something that we should focus on.
That is what I am also
Yeah.
basically.
We should-
A lot of entrepreneurs right now in Kerala, especially.
Yeah, it's my take. Basically, what you need to understand is positioning your product, whom you are selling to and what they need, right? Rather than what you want to sell them. Basically, you want to understand the customer, right? And basically do a brand positioning. That's what we say. And like I said, there are so many experts in that field also. Only thing is that it's a unorganized sector. In terms of there's no ecosystem for marketing team itself. That is something which we can build upon.
That's something that we should involve in. I think it's probably a real need that we should try and see what we can do.
Yeah. So to add to this, we have approximately 70-75 tech communities who are part of the, DevCon, cybersecurity, whatever. We tried this also in the past. We ran sales, marketing communities, but that was not. People are not showing interest on the other side. And the thing is, if there's a URL, it's done. Right? So that you need to be aware of this. Even tech, there's only sales people who are coming in that meeting. You want leaders also come join and then collaborate. So that is first step. We did that, but I think consistently we have to do it. And obviously we can do our part in the whole thing. So I think we should try. There are people.
We are getting better quality tech guys, but when it comes to quality sales guys or quality marketing guys, we are talking about tech that tech is not. I mean, we are getting not quality tech, but look at the other side of things where the marketing inside that is even below part. That's where we need to build.
I think you guys can try it.
No, I would also say there is plenty of talent in Chennai. It's a global SaaS companies, and it has almost become the SaaS capital. That I really mean it. And talent is available. We just have to get them here. And we need to be intentional about it. When there's a gap, you bring that talent. And we should find ways to bring those.
One great thing is Trivandrum has undiscovered potential. They're undiscovered totally. Even this is a city where thousands of rocket scientists. That's what I'm saying. So there are approximately 8,000 people came and shared their knowledge like you here, organically. So I think if you can show consistent interest in this and you can drive it, create the whole thing, we can organize every time. Then we'll not be able to run a lot of activities there. So we promote communities to come here and then. So we can drive all that. There is that interest. Not forget about Chennai. That was one surprising thing we found. There are 10-year-old child prodigies who are masters teaching universities in Australia in astrophysics. The potential talent here, even in marketing, I'm saying, that are discovered. So we can consistently do activities.
So marketing is coming up with
Yeah, it has to be heterogeneous. So I think we need to do some consistent effort. If we realize that's a problem, we're there.
That's why we are always seeing Carestack and open and maybe a couple of others. And there are 1,000 other, I think 4,000 startups.
One other thing is I find a lot of people traveling like Roman said to Bangalore. Now I'm also in Bangalore. So when I was organizing here, nobody was actually. That's the irony. Things will happen because we need to have that belief. We can drive it, we're there. We can do consistently. One thing is that all these communities grow because we consistently do. When we started in 2017, 23 people, 4 people. Now, just population, you have certain set of quality people coming. But it happened only over time. So I think we can consistently do this, we can build a community, and that can create a force.
The one thing that I'm beginning to, at least in the last year, couple of years, I talked to a lot of investors that there is, I'm wearing the state ambassador, from that perspective. So one thing, there is recognition for Kerala talent. There is real recognition today, right? So there are funds, that come and tell me, hey, I talked to somebody today who's from Kerala, and they're like, yeah, very excited, right? So there is that recognition because they never thought of Kerala being that place. Always think about there's that surprise element, and so there is a lot more recognition, and then they also share with me, the founders really are good people. You don't hear that, normally. Right? So Kerala has attracted, there are at least 4 or 5 investments that has happened in the last 6 months or last 8 months or so from people who are out of the part of Kerala, the startups that will raise seed capital or seed pre-seed, say. So the investment is happening.
Last year we crossed 50 million.
Correct. Yeah. So there is investment that is definitely happening. Now, you mentioned about sales and marketing gap. I've always found that in the technology business, I've found real technical gap. I struggle with that. Because I don't believe we have enough quality engineers. We have engineers, but enough quality engineers to continue to build great stuff from here. Great engineering talent, people are dying around the world for great engineering talent. That much I'm certain, right? Because there is no Ukraine, there is no other places that people will go to if talent is here. Because there is other parts of the world, there is no consistency, there is chaos, there is it's not safe. So if you have great math talent, great engineering talent, people want to work in, people will, especially I can speak, US companies want to work with people who are here compared to any other part of the world,
So what is missing?
We are missing more people, there are a lot of successful Keralites who have the exposure. We need to find ways to attract them and have them spend more time here. We need more people to be here because it's hard to, build it. So like for example, Suri came back, right? After spending 10 years, we need more people to come back, right? And it is a tough thing, right? But come back, even if they don't come back full time, right? Being able to spend more time, and being getting involved, and I see the startup ecosystem, Kerala Startup Mission doing a phenomenal job now, trying to bring in as many people as possible, trying to reach out people who are built highly scalable companies and things like that, and trying to bring them here. Now, one thing I would promise is I would take people to Silicon Valley. So that is something we would create a program where we would get nothing else, just exposure, right? That we can solve for. It's easy to solve for, and something like that I'm willing to figure out a way to make it happen.
So I think that's the end of the Q&A. I understand that while hearing you talk, Infosys was the first company to be listed in Nasdaq, which was in 2006. So I think technically hearing 2006. It was listed in 2006. It's a Byju's questionnaire for attending the UPSC exams. So it was something that I read through long back. So it was to have stories like you, and I'm sure there are many stories like you that who have been brought up in Trivandrum, who has gone outside, built a name for yourself, and has built a name in Trivandrum for the people here as well, that we need to bring to life. Like you said, if we can bring people back and have them sit here, talk to a room full of people who are actually looking for advice, it would be great. And it was really great having you here to listen to you. And the more I have the chance to talk to people like you or hear from people like you, I understand that everybody starts from somewhere, and failure is like very normal. And standards that we set in school, colleges are very unrealistic, and it's high time we change and go from that, right? And thank you so much for sharing and celebrating failure throughout your entire life and showcasing the odd ratio which baseball men would never ever, celebrate. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us. Thank you so much, Robin sir, for being here and making this happen as well.
And we should be celebrating people like Robin as well. Like spending, I'm not here as much as I would like to be, but we need people like you, Abhi, Robin, Sureen, Jay, you guys are making it happen on the ground. I don't take any credit for what's happening on the ground. We just need to continue it. Things may not see, just like a startup journey, there is this inflection point that happens. It takes a while, but then suddenly, I would say Kerala is probably one or two big exits away from putting ourselves on that gold map. Just one or two. And, so that, my mission in life is, I want a direct flight from San Francisco to Trivandrum. And that is my mission in life.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.